My name is Gill Phillips and I'm the creator of Whose Shoes, a popular approach to co-production. I was named as an HSJ 100 wildcard and want to help give a voice to others talking about their ideas and experiences. I'll be chatting with people from all sorts of different perspectives, walking in their shoes. If you are interested in the future of healthcare and like to hear what other people think, or perhaps even contribute at some point, Whose Shoes Wildcard is for you. So today we have a Christmas special, and who else would I want to do this with but my fantastic friend, Fab Obs Flo, Florence Wilcock. I can't believe I've waited until episode 15 to bring Flo onto the Wildcard Whose Shoes podcast, although we have heard snippets of her voice in earlier episodes. Flo is my very much a wildcard obstetrician friend who, along with Kath Evans, was responsible for bringing Whose Shoes into the world of maternity care. And back in 2014, Flo co-founded the MatEx, that's Maternity Experience social movement with me. We quickly became magic mates.
So, we put our heads together and we've come up with a festive special called WildObs because it's a mashup of Wildcard Whose Shoes and the Obs Pod. And we're hoping very much that you're going to enjoy this festive edition, which has a little bit of music and a lot of mischief. I can't believe, actually, looking back, that we've been at this for 7 years now. So we met back in 2014 and we'd met virtually. And when we met in person for the first time, face to face, I remember throwing my arms around you for a hug because it just seemed right, even though we hadn't actually ever met in real life. And yeah, we've just had so much fun. And I think that's a bit what we're hoping to share today is some of the more creative, fabulous stuff that we've done over the years. Some of it Christmassy or festive.
And we've actually recorded an episode together for your podcast, haven't we? Our Magic Mates episode.
Yes, so if people want to go back and hear a bit more depth, episode 67, Magic Mates, is where to go back and start.
It's been quite a story, hasn't it?
It has.
So today we've got a music themed, is this right, Flo? A music themed maternity special?
Yeah, so I was very inspired by your episode, the pandemic poems episode. I just thought that was so brilliant and so creative to just have an episode like that sort of flowed. And I love the poems. And it made me think in the run up to, what shall I do this year? Because last year I talked all about working on labour ward over Christmas. I thought, I could do poems and music. And I messaged you and you'd had exactly the same idea. And it was just one of those things of, aha. We need to do something together. And that's kind of how this whole journey starts, really, because I remember getting a train with you. And this was back in 2015 when I've looked it up. And I think we were on the way back from a Birth Tank stakeholder event.
That's a fantastic name.
Now, Birth Tank was very serious, part of the National Maternity Review, and they were at the point where they hadn't completed the review, but they were starting to kind of think and synthesize what their recommendations might be. And they had an event in Birmingham to sort of test things out a bit and float a few ideas at us. And we happened to be there along with quite a few of our gang of the MatEx community. And on the way back on the train, you said to me, I want to show you STELLER stories. Now, as you know, I'm a bit of a social media novice and you usually get me into trouble by making me join all sorts of platforms.
Oh, but it's been fun.
It has been fun. But you were saying, look at these. These are STELLER stories. You can write little stories. This is a really good way of communicating with people. And as soon as you showed it to me, because you turn a page, a virtual page, it immediately made me think, because this was being held in November, made me think, that would be amazing. We could do a MatEx Advent calendar. And my initial thought was literally you would have the date and whatever it was, and you would turn a single page and there would be something inside the door, like an advent calendar. However, it didn't really end up like that. It ended up with us spending between us the whole month writing ever more complicated stories, which were sometimes 20 or 30 pages long on a theme, and getting, I would say, ever more wild and wacky. I don't know what you think. And we alternated. So I can't remember if I was odd numbers and you were even, or the other way around.
We mixed it up a little bit, but it was something like that. I think you had, what do snowflakes and birth have in common?
Oh, yes, that's right, because snowflakes are completely unique. Each one is totally different. And that is exactly like birth. No birth is going to be the same as another birth. They're all individual. Yes, and I remember doing one about crackers as well, Christmas crackers.
That's right.
Because I was talking about language, and if you Google crackers, you've got cheese crackers and you've got Christmas crackers. What do we mean by crackers? Yeah, I think it just kind of, my brain ran away with me a bit. And I do remember my husband and family getting more and more frustrated as I spent longer and longer collecting pictures of strange things and pulling a story together each day.
But the theme was just so incredible. And one of mine was the three wise men, or indeed women, who bring practical presents for the new baby. So I don't know how many people want myrrh or frankincense, but these are actual maternity care gifts for the new baby. So we were using our Christmas stories to weave in learning in terms of maternity care. So I think the three gifts were optimal cord clamping, weight to weigh, and of course skin to skin, inspired by the fantastic Jenny the midwife. I mean, obviously, Flo, you can tell us more about those and why they're important.
Waiting for weighing is not whipping the baby straight away and doing all the tasks that we need to do. So weighing the baby, doing its baby check and giving it vitamin K, but leaving it in contact with the mum, which also goes with that idea of uninterrupted skin to skin in theatre or in any birth room. And optimal cord clamping is about the baby getting the blood from the umbilical cord, because the blood in the umbilical cord is the baby's blood. And if you cut and clamp the umbilical cord immediately, that baby's losing quite a significant amount of its blood volume.
So those were quite significant, as I remember it, campaigns at the time. Do you think that that's changed now when we're looking back, 6-7 years? Do you think some of those things are more commonplace now?
Yeah, I think we're part of the way on the journey rather than the whole way. So I certainly think skin to skin in theatre is much more commonplace. And certainly we routinely now leave the umbilical cord for at least a minute before we clamp and cut it at caesarean, for example, than what we were doing back then, which was immediate cutting and clamping. So I think we are evolving. But I would say we've still got a way to go. But yes, it is really encouraging to look back and see some of the practice changes that have happened.
And to think that our Matex Advent stories might have contributed to that, because certainly because they're fun. I think that's what we try and do through our Maverick stuff together, isn't it? Because they're fun, then lots of people actually look at them, read them, and then that starts to influence.
Yeah, and it's about waking up a conversation, isn't it? And if something's attractive and interesting and engaging, people say to their friends, oh, have you seen this? And oh, maybe I could contribute to this and jump in and change my practice. So yeah, and I think for both of us, our podcasts are kind of the next iteration of that, aren't they? In terms of trying to draw people in and give them ideas and energize people.
Exactly. And I think at that time, obviously it was all evolving. So we started to pull in some of we've talked about our Matex gang. So obviously other clinicians, but the women, the mum leaders really. And Helen Calvert was a force to be reckoned with. I know I couldn't tweet without putting the little wild horses emoji in next to Helen. And she was the one that set up our Matex Facebook group, which is still going strong with, I think, about 4,500 members. So I remember giving a challenge to Helen that perhaps she could get her mum friends to do a rendition of Santa Baby. And I remember it was tricky because I wanted to make it into our final Stella story, and a limitation or a rule of a Stella story is that if you have a video, it can only be 15 seconds. So I remember writing this different version of Santa Baby, especially for Matt Exp, and Helen getting different ones of her friends to read the different verses, and a couple of them came back at about 16, 17 seconds, and it was really difficult. Let's play a clip.
Santa baby, don't leave us stuck so soon after birth. The worst is often postnatal care. Santa baby, keep filling up that sack for my text.
Santa baby, feeding is the last on our list. The gist is that we need more support, Santa baby. So thank you for the gift of Mad Exp.
For me, that is my favourite story, and literally it has stayed with me. So anytime I'm Christmas shopping and I hear Santa Baby, the music, literally in my head, all I hear is Santa Baby, put it in the sack for Matt X. And that's all I hear. And I don't even know what the actual lyrics of the song are.
Nor do I.
Because that is the version, and it literally, I have it on the brain at this time of year. And so when I was initially thinking about doing the Obs Pod special with some music and poems, that was immediately the thing I thought, we absolutely have to put that in.
Brilliant, yeah. And I'm conscious as well that obviously we're describing some highly visual stuff. I mean, all these mums singing under their Christmas trees with Christmas hats and so on. But we can each in our joint podcast put these links in our programme notes, can't we? So that people can read the stories or see the little videos if it's something more visual.
Yeah, totally. Something to explore.
So moving on then, that Matex Advent series gave us a fantastic foundation. Where are we up to now? We're still quite early on, aren't we? We're just about to enter the NHS England Matex Challenge Fund and to bid for and successfully run our Nobody's Patient project and building on lots of connections and so on.
Yes. So we had made, as you say, we'd gathered quite a gang of incredible women predominantly around us who had a real passion for trying to improve maternity care in genuine co-production with midwives, obstetricians, anaesthetists and so on. And the National Maternity Review had been published and they'd put out this Matex Challenge Fund, and we'd put together a really good co-production bid and won some money to run this project. We were one of 3 projects up and down the country. And I think the reason it's called Nobody's Patient is because it was about women falling between gaps in services. And I feel probably we're going to need to do a whole Nobody's Patient podcast episode on its own merit, because it certainly is a huge topic. But essentially we were looking at care of babies that were in the neonatal unit, women that were severely ill during pregnancy unexpectedly, and women with second trimester loss, so who perhaps fell between gynecology and maternity services. And as one of the 3 successful projects, we were invited to Expo NHS, the big once-a-year conference. And we were in quite a small little side room. It was quite disappointing, I think, in that it was a huge conference centre in Manchester, and we were thrilled to be there and be part of the conversation. And we had a very short space of time to do anything.
We were like the Fringe Act, weren't we?
Yeah.
So we were now at Expo in 2016, but that was actually a step up. Let's come back to 2016. Flo, do you remember the previous year when we had no space at all? But of course, we wanted to get the message of Matex out there and ended up attracting interest by juggling lemons and things in the cafe area. Do you remember that?
Yeah, we commandeered a table.
Because we couldn't afford the £10,000 stand.
And we got a load of lemons and we were a bit rogue. We went round sticking Matex stickers on people.
On the good and the great.
Yes. And we had T-shirts that said, "Ask me about Matex."
And it was incredibly exciting because there were all the big, expensive official stands there. And our table in the coffee area was just the board games, some leaflets, some stickers. And I think virtually we stuck a few stickers on people as well who didn't actually have one at the real event. I remember doing that. So that was the previous year. And I think by now we got a bit of a bigger space. But I remember on Twitter we were giving less and less time. I think originally we were offered like 20 minutes, and then this was Sarah Jane Marsh, the maternity transformation lead, who really I think values what we do, but it was, "I'm really sorry, Gill and Flo, you've only got 15 minutes." And then we ended up with 7.5 minutes, and she said, "Can you go with that?" And then she threw in at the end a challenge to do a Matex rap as part of it. So I remember at the actual event people were expecting someone to come up and stand at the front and do a PowerPoint presentation. And we used our 7.5 minutes to get women sitting around the room amongst the audience, which was perhaps a couple of hundred people, to read a Whose Shoes poem. And it definitely made a big impact.
It certainly did. I remember people being a bit stunned when perhaps the person next to them in the audience popped up and read a poem.
Because people expect certain things at NHS conferences, and this was starting to be bolder and very different, I think. And I think that made us quite a lot bolder, actually. And I remember doing an outrageous tweet. It really was, saying that next year we deserved to be on the main stage. In fact, we were going to have Matex the musical.
Yes.
And I remember, I think in my head, seriously, I had like a West End musical production in mind. It was quite crazy. And then the story kind of grew from there.
Yeah. But before we talk about that, we need to introduce the rap.
We do.
Because actually, first of all, before we gambled and threw our hat into the main stage, we rose to the challenge that Sarah Jane had set us. I say we in the royal we sense. I had nothing to do with this at all. But our wonderful mum singers who'd done the brilliant Santa Baby came up with a rap. They were like, "Yeah, she wants a rap, we'll do a rap."
And I'd given them like 25 seconds maximum, and they came back with it, including the credits of the women's names coming up at the end.
It was awesome.
Sammy Jane challenged us to do a rap
to tell you about Matex
and put it on the map.
Mums are here to help lend a hand.
To tell you how we feel and help you understand. We do stuff together, we get things done.
Come and join us, Matex is fun.
So having done 24 Stellar stories in 2015 for Advent, what to do when 2016 rolled around? Well, we weren't going to do it all again because actually it was a mammoth task. But we'd laid an amazing foundation that we could build on, and a lot had happened during 2016. So if you go and explore the Stellar stories, what you'll find is there are the original stories from 2015, and then at the back of them, we've put some additional pages. So we gave a bit of an update in 2016 on each topic about what new things had happened or what new connections we'd made or who else had jumped on board and done the same thing and how things had developed. So the stories in themselves tell you a little bit of a chronological story of each of those different improvement topics over a couple of years, rather than being just as we left them back in 2015.
And how fantastic to think of all that's happened since, because that update itself was 5 years ago now.
Yeah. So, Gill, you were saying you kind of threw it out there, Matex the musical, the main stage. And I do remember we had quite a lot of Twitter traffic and joking about it back and forth with Sarah Jane and various other people. Then I can't remember at what point in the year she contacted us and went, she'd bagged the main stage. And I remember thinking, oh my God, what have we done?
And she hadn't actually bagged the main stage, I think it's important to point out, for Matex the musical. It wasn't called that at that stage, was it?
No, it was the maternity transformation. Very serious.
Programme board, programme.
Yeah.
So it morphed into Matex the musical, didn't it? I remember there was a phone call with Sarah Jane Marsh and some of the NHS England people asking us to add some of our Matex magic. Do you remember that?
I do. And most of what I remember about the preparation for this was you and me taking the card sets and scenarios and poems and trying to theme them against the recommendations in the National Maternity Review and the actions that we knew were taking place up and down the country. And I've still got on my phone, I think, photos, because the quickest way was for us to take a photo of stuff laid out all over the floor and send it to one another and compare notes about which ones we'd selected and what this was versus that. And an awful lot of planning. And I definitely think you did the heavy lifting with this one. I think I was a bit, oh my God, like we've just gone too far. And I think you bore the brunt of this. Not least because I was also presenting in a different conference in a different city on the same day as well.
That's right. You literally came from one to the other, didn't you?
I did a mad dash.
I mean, I remember having a room of my house just taken over by this great long, if you can imagine it visually, Post-it notes all around the different themes. There were about 7 themes of better births, and we were literally trying to tell the story, and we got so many different layers of it. So it was what the better birth story was, and then we were being really quite, I think, hard hitting in terms of there were the early adopter groups, there was the Matex movement, Our People, Vanguard sites, Choice Pioneers, but we were really trying to pick out actual actions that were happening. And I remember having post-it notes that colour-coded them accordingly. It didn't matter who was doing it, but we were trying to demonstrate that you don't have to be part of a formal system to make a difference. And lots of fantastic actions were coming through the Matex movement, as well as the official channels, if you like. So I remember having what the story was in terms of better births, and then trying to match it with actual best practice. And then alongside that, to drop in Who's scenarios and poems that would bring that particular aspect alive. And again, to use the same idea of people popping up in the main audience. Now, this was huge by this stage. It was going to be actually on the main stage at Expo, and it was the penultimate spot just before it was going to be the health minister, I think. So you got a lot of people coming into our session, not necessarily that interested in maternity, but who were getting themselves and their laptops and so on into place, ready to hear the big one at the end of the conference. So again, planting people around the audience, but in terms of logistics, passing microphones and so on about, and trying to set it up by then in terms of the actual musical element. So we got our fantastic music therapist colleagues coming up from Chelsea and Westminster, and bringing their travel guitars to have a rehearsal, and trying to set up a piano next to the main stage at Expo, which they didn't normally have.
Funny that. What do you mean there's no piano at an NHS conference? Why not?
And then crowdsourcing of it in terms of trying to involve people who would be there anyway, so that we weren't incurring extra expense bringing people specially. And I remember one particular challenge that I took on personally was trying to get a crowdsourced piano within Manchester, because I thought, for goodness sake, we're going to put this on the main stage at Expo. There's got to be a kind of win-win reciprocity. And we got Forsyth, the local, I think, 150-year-old music shop, gave us a bigger and better version of their piano because it had their Forsyth logo bigger on the back of it. That's a lot of what we do compared with just a standard approach to things, I think.
Yeah, I think Matex the musical, when I look back on it, was an incredible labour of love. It took an enormous amount of time and energy from so many people. I mean, I think we had a group of about 30 of us in the end, and I've still got that photo from that day as my profile header. And I think it was very ambitious, and it was a real example of what Helen Bevan would call new power versus old power. And I think I wasn't sure they were quite ready for us, but it's still one of the things that I am most proud of us having achieved, actually, to be on the main stage at Expo with a crowdsourced, truly co-produced event showcasing such great work happening up and down the country in maternity. I also remember, going back to your idea of a full-on West End musical, that we had to be really careful choosing what music because of copyright.
That's right.
And then lots of the things that we wanted to use were out of our grasp. So we settled for good old Twinkle Twinkle, didn't we?
We did. And then obviously some of the subject areas that we were covering, because we were using this music to make the Better Birth song, and an incredible amount of time and trouble went into making sure that it wasn't trivialised, that the actual words and the story was being told in a really sensitive way, with some very appropriate people contributing to the words and the lyrics, and obviously with the skill of people like Claire Flower and Grace Meadows, who were our music therapists and used to using music in imaginative ways. It certainly didn't just happen. It was a labour of love. And I found it particularly difficult because that was the summer my mum died, and I was obviously looking after her. And, you know, people have got their personal stories as a backdrop to these things, but it was just such a big thing to do. And the pride with which, when I think it was kind of accidentally, in inverted commas, we hadn't heard that we were meant to go in front of the main stage. People had been sitting in the audience, and at the end, people with all their colour-coded Matex sashes. So we got the 4 colours of Who's Shoes, clinicians, people with more formal power, the women and families, and the creatives, and so on. So we got this red, blue, yellow and green sashes with everyone from literally a baroness. So fantastic Baroness Cumbledge was there with us going up onto the main stage. And perhaps I shouldn't mention who accidentally went up on the stage rather than along the front of the stage, but it made it much more colourful and much more memorable, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it was fantastic.
So we've got 2 clips of music to play from Matex, the musical. One is a clip of what we've just been talking about in terms of that gang of people coming up on the stage. And then the other one is Jenny the midwife doing her rap. So play the first clip and come back after the first clip and tell the story a little bit more about Jenny's rap.
And talking about how sensitively and carefully we had to plan things, that afterwards it was so lovely that we got some feedback from people in the audience who said we'd pitched it exactly right and exactly how they felt it had kind of captured the important work of the maternity transformation programme and really was how the future and co-production should be, rather than the perhaps lip service it can sometimes be.
And that meant such a lot.
It did. It really did.
Because that included people with perinatal mental health problems, bereaved parents.
Yeah.
It was a very difficult path to tread, and to try and get it to land just right was risky, wasn't it?
It was. It certainly was.
So that feedback was amazing and very, very much appreciated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Jenny the M and her amazing skin to skin rap. I mean, where to start, really?
How many people would go on the main stage of Expo and do a rap about skin to skin? with boots and caps.
Probably one.
Some boots
Probably
and caps.
one. Probably Jenny and no one else. Yeah, she's daring, she's courageous, she's a midwife like no other. And yeah, I'm sure you're going to have her on your podcast, but I've beaten you to it.
You have.
I've had her on mine and it was a joy. And she talked about being inspired actually by people being quite nasty to her and her being, well, I'm going to fight for this because I know this is right for women and babies and families. And yes, you know, she's been passionate about Skin to Skin and she wrote a rap and she performed her rap.
It was amazing. It really was.
Yeah, as is she.
As is she.
I was sat there thinking on my seat, if babes took talk, wouldn't that be neat? A baby would say, don't separate me from mother, my first embrace should be with no other. So here's my rap said from me to you, on XYNHS 17 stage, from a baby's point of view. I like to be in Skin to Skin, it's bang on trend and totally in. Skin to Skin just calms me down, prevents me from wearing a frown. It keeps me warm, my blood sugar stable, I'm telling you, it ain't no fable. So lay your cards up on the table, practice daily Skin to Skin, the natural way to oxytocin.
So in 2017, in November, we ran some picker sessions. So this was, for me, like everything coming full circle because all my work with maternity experience had started with the National CQC Maternity Survey. And in about half the organisations in the country, this is undertaken by Picker. And Picker asked us to run some sessions for them, reviewing the results of their survey. And we did 2 sessions, one in London and one in Leeds. And that gave us an opportunity to gather together all sorts of Matex people from across the country. So we had people from Leeds, Barnsley, Lewisham and Greenwich. And we were trying to inspire people how they might act on their CQC National Maternity Survey results. By 2018... our next big project, Mind and Body, was coming together and underway. Jill, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about Mind and Body as a project.
Yeah, I think Mind and Body have been waiting to happen all the way through the work that we've done so far. So we've done the original generic maternity project, and then it had developed very naturally into Nobody's Patient, starting to look at people sadly falling through gaps between services. And obviously perinatal mental health runs through all of that. So I think we found that we got quite a lot of already good Who's Shoes material touching on that subject, but there was a need, and so many people were mentioning this to us, to do a bespoke module around perinatal mental health. And it was Louise Page who... Louise is in London, she's an obstetrician in London, and was doing a project specifically around perinatal mental health. And she pretty much said to me, Jill, we need to do some Who's Shoes work. And at that point, Who's Shoes and Matex was growing by then. I was able to say to her, well, look, other people are saying the same thing. Let's see if we can bring them in to the main project to make it bigger and more comprehensive. And behind the scenes, as we were developing the new Who's Shoes resources, we were able to provide them through the project back to the people who were already using the original resources if they wanted them.
Yeah.
So really through my networks, we managed to bring in the Southwest regional team, who'd just been fantastic with Who's Shoes. They'd had some very, very powerful and quite a large number of events. And then my local network, which was the West Midlands network. And that made it very, very interesting because we were able to do 3 very different types of event with the 3 areas, and to test out things. I mean, obviously the issues in inner city London or Birmingham might be very different from perhaps some of the rural areas in Cornwall, or equally in parts like Shropshire of the West Midlands. And to bring in perhaps military communities, rural communities, fishing communities. There were so many different aspects to it. So again, I think we could do a whole new podcast around mind and body. But in terms of the development of the Matex story, that was happening at this stage in 2018.
It was. And so we decided to do Mind and Body Advent. So it had its own hashtag. And you really pulled this together, an incredible set of videos of all sorts of people talking about all sorts of aspects of perinatal mental health and how to improve it. And through that project, as part of the journey, we started to come across all sorts of creative ideas, didn't we, for how to help your mental health and well-being, whether that's during pregnancy or as a new parent. I don't know if you want to share some of the examples.
This is going to be a bit of an epic flow. Why don't we take a break and play Claire playing on the postnatal awards? This is Claire Flower. She's one of our music therapist friends who came and played the piano for us at Matex the Musical. But it's just a lovely little clip, isn't it, of Claire playing the piano. Is it Jingle Bells?
Yes.
With a little girl singing with her. And it's just magic.
It is delightful.
So that's an example of creativity, and we were finding so many. Coming forward during our mind and body work were people like Lorraine Cheeseman in Gloucestershire, doing fantastic arts and craft work through her Shine project. My friend Leanne Howlett in Warwickshire was running an amazing outdoor festival and a community walk to raise awareness of perinatal mental health. I think we're mentioning these kind of examples because creative means can really bring in new people and raise awareness rather than more traditional just a report about something, which is obviously terribly important, but it's not necessarily reaching the public and the people that matter.
Yeah, and it comes back to that idea of social prescribing in terms of what we were talking about. The whole ethos of the project was mind and body, treating the whole person and considering what's important to that whole person, not just thinking about the physical illness or problems associated with pregnancy and new parenthood, but actually treating people as people, and that going for a walk or doing some art therapy or playing some music is as important as perhaps giving a blood pressure tablet or something that we might see as more traditional treatment.
And one of the other musical stories that I loved at the time was Music While You Wait. Can you tell us about that one, Flo?
So this was Claire with the violin lady, which was an amazing story. I think it happened at the Chelsea and Westminster workshop, and I can't remember what year that was held, but it was a postnatal workshop. But the story was that this woman was sitting in the waiting room. I think it was the diabetic antenatal clinic. So she was coming for a lot of appointments. Very onerous having diabetes in pregnancy. You have an awful lot of checkups. And she was in the waiting room, sitting waiting and listening to Claire play on her keyboard. Now, this woman used to play the violin, and coming week in, week out and hearing this music and playing in the waiting room, and this really quite difficult situation she was in with pregnancy with a complication, made her bring her violin to one of her appointments and get it out and play it with Claire. And for me, this really spoke to me because when I was young, I played the violin. I spent many, many hours playing my violin and playing in youth orchestras and things like that. And I hadn't played my violin for years and years and years. So when I heard this story, I really empathised. I thought, oh my God, that really could have been me. And when we held the workshop, she came and played her violin with Claire at the workshop.
That's just so lovely.
And we've got a snippet of that.
Oh, and I've remembered she had a beautiful name, Florica.
And funnily enough, since all that happened and we've been in the pandemic, one of the things I've done in the last year while we've all been locked away in our houses and unable to do anything is get out my violin.
Oh, have you?
That I had not played for about 20 or more years and play my violin.
Do you know I've got a violin as well that I haven't played for even more years than that?
Jill, we could play a duet.
I think you're rather better than me and always
Oh
were.
my
but...
God, that would be so fun.
That would be funny.
Oh, well, that can be next year's festive special if we do some practice between now and then.
A lot of practice, I think, but that would be funny.
Excellent. So now we've reached 2019. Bear with us, everybody. Don't worry, this story will end. 2019 was an epic year because we went to a lemon festival together, which again will be a whole nother episode. But given we have fun with lemons, and people on Twitter know we have fun with lemons, someone, I think it might have been Zoe, Adds the Poet's mum, I think she might have pointed us in the direction of the fact that it was an actual lemon festival in Menton.
In its 86th year.
In its 86th year, sorry, in Menton in the south of France. And so we went for a completely unbelievable lemon-themed weekend together.
Very surreal.
Which is one of the most special trips of my entire life.
Yeah, and me.
It was incredible. So we carried on with our creative, slightly wacky ideas.
With even more lemons.
And the lemons definitely made it into the Advent series that year. And Jill started a Matex Advent series that year with shout outs to people who were providing support for all sorts of different people. And she kicked it off December the 1st with our wonderful music therapy friends at Chelsea and Westminster, and referred back to Music Whilst You Wait.
So that was the music clip we just heard. So it's all coming together almost as if it was planned.
So 2020. Wow.
Oh, the pandemic hit.
Oh, the pandemic. Oh. If only it was over.
I know.
And that was a mega challenge because all the work we'd done was all these amazing face-to-face workshops with 50 to 70 people in a room and unbelievable relationship building and connections and fun and cake and just very much human relationship based improvement and playing a game at the bottom of all this. So the pandemic was a bit tricky, wasn't it?
And I guess the big challenge was whether we should try and take Whose Shoes online, because just as you've said, to be honest, I was quite reluctant because I thought it was about cake and bunting and being able to give people a hug and look round the room and read people's mood and so on. But Anna and Carrie, the graphic artists, were very keen, quickly adapted their methodology so that it was just as good as in the room, with studio lighting and clever ability to flip cameras around and being able to talk through the graphic records that they produced to capture the conversations. And Mr. Whose Shoes came to the party. He is a proper IT man and took it as quite a challenge. And before we knew it, we were bringing the board game online, we were flowing the dice, we were linking it to our database. And to be honest, with things like OBS software and stuff that I'd never heard of, we were ahead of the game, I think, in terms of some really interactive and quite special Zoom sessions. So again, that's a whole separate podcast, possibly, virtual Whose Shoes. But it meant that generally we could keep our work going. And in terms of maternity, we were able to do some really difficult workshops with big themes like continuity of carer, topics that maternity teams needed to embrace, and proper Whose Shoes territory in terms of how it affected different people, the staff, the women, the midwives, people who want to work part-time, whatever it might be. And we ran virtual workshops with Shrewsbury and Telford, for example, and also the East Kent maternity teams. And we did some pretty creative stuff, didn't we, Flo? And you got involved in both of those, and it was brilliant.
We did, and one of the sessions was, again, just before Christmas, and we were having a bit of our kind of normal brainstorming, and I was looking around my office at home for inspiration, and I've got an ABC of birth on the wall, and we suddenly thought, a bit like our advent calendar idea, but we would do an alphabet, an ABC, but it would be a Christmassy, festive ABC of birth. But then, being us, it wasn't going to be as simple as, A is for apple, because, why would it be? So we had elves, E is for elves, and that was actually about perineal stitching after you've had the baby, because to me that meant the elves and the shoemaker fairy story. So we had some slightly cryptic things on our alphabet. And the other thing we decided to do was we only filled up a few random letters, and then we gave a challenge, didn't we, to the organisation we were working with, and said, well, there you go, here's your starter for 10. Up to you to complete the festive MatX continuity of care ABC, because we wanted them to have ideas. And again, it's co-production. We don't want to give people all the answers. People have got to come up with their own solutions. So that was really fun.
And I think it's about ownership, isn't it? For people to come up with things that they've had fun producing that then are meaningful to them.
Yes.
And they really, really rose to the challenge, didn't they? And then displayed it very proudly, really, in their atrium, so that everybody can see as they come in the graphic record, recalling the conversations, these extra more creative bits that the team have created. And it keeps the conversations going, doesn't it? For people to come in and think, what's that? How did that happen? What does that mean? Is a very powerful way of actually keeping the energy from these events and taking forward the conversations and building them.
Completely. It becomes a talking point, not only in the immediate after an event, but for a long time to come, particularly if you put it up. And if you put it up, you're drawing into the conversation so many different people. Anyone that walks past can ask, what is this? And start thinking about topics.
And I think another exciting, unexpected outcome, really, so many of these things have evolved during the pandemic, is linking between teams. So on these virtual events, being able to bring people from different teams together. We've talked a lot about connections, so that, say, if you've got those two hospitals and you say, are you working together? They'll probably say, oh, yes. But that might well be just at director of midwifery level, whereas this is the continuity of carer leads starting to really form relationships like we've got and be able to bounce ideas off each other and practical problems, to have colleagues from other trusts who are in a very similar challenges and being able to compare notes and be stronger together.
Yeah, and I remember when you were talking about doing virtual Whose Shoes, you saying to me, well, I don't just want it to be what we do in the room converted onto a computer. I want it to bring a different aspect, bring different things. And I think that is something that has been amazing about the virtual situation, in that rather than me having to take a whole day off and travel up to Shropshire and attend an event and do whatever, I could jump on the computer for an hour and join you. And like you say, so could the national lead for continuity of care, or Jackie Dunkley-Bent, the chief midwifery officer for England. So it enabled some of that geographical disparate networking in a really new way, which hopefully will keep and will be a real silver lining to the whole thing.
So 2020, of course, we had to do another Advent series.
Of course.
And in this case, it was trying to pull together best practice from the pandemic, and again to feed through that thread of creativity. So we had health visitors singing, and of course our music therapists, people like Gina Sargent sang about fab NHS stuff and how it offers an amazing platform to share good stuff within the NHS. So again, we were collecting stories and videos. So I've actually recorded a podcast with Dr. Terry Porritt, who runs Fab Change Stuff, on the Wildcard Who Shoes podcast series.
Oh, it was a brilliant episode.
And I get involved in quite a lot of stuff, say NHS England type stuff. I don't hear Fab NHS stuff mentioned enough because it's just such a simple, inclusive platform to share bits and pieces of best practice to save people reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, I definitely recommend a listen to that one.
Thanks, Flo. And coming back to the Advent series, again, we brought in lots and lots of creative stuff. And I remember the lively dancing from Emily and Emily Rose from Dance Break.
Yeah.
And then there was Thomas, wasn't there?
Oh, Thomas, he's amazing. Yes. So I have this wonderful midwife, Rianne, who works in my antenatal clinic with me. And her son, Thomas, writes the most amazing poetry. And his poem, The Great Realisation, which went completely viral in the pandemic last year. So when Gill started to do some videos of the pandemic Advent series, I thought, well, no harm in asking. So I asked, and he did us a little snippet, especially, which was absolutely brilliant. And his poems are very reflective and lovely. And yeah, really, really lovely to have been able to include that.
And I just absolutely love that. I think The Great Realisation, I think it's over 7 million views on YouTube. That's extraordinary. I hope he's doing well because he really deserves to be.
Oh, he's doing amazingly. He's literally just performed in the Albert Hall at the Royal British Legion Festival of Remembrance. It's unbelievable what's happening with him. And rightly so.
And he made a little clip for our Advent series.
He did.
One of my favourites actually in that series was, and she is a real friend of mine, and she actually did the opening podcast with me on Wildcard, Dr. Fazana Hussain. And I hardly dared ask her really because she's always so busy in GPs. Just to get somebody like that, and I just put it out there, would she like to be part of the Advent series? And then suddenly she popped up dressed as Father Christmas, talking about the innovative things they've been doing at the Project Surgery, it is, her small GP practice in London. And I've just seen her pop up this week on Twitter dressed as an elf. With
Fantastic.
Doing a jab thing. It's all about trying to get people understanding about the importance of vaccination, but without just making a public health video. I think she's amazing.
She is. And well, I'm hoping if we're sitting here this time next year, I will have met her by then because, yeah, she just sounds fabulous.
She really is.
Mm.
So we ended up our Advent series last year, and Chelsea and Westminster music therapists have been doing their own Advent series. So each day they'd had a different person singing about. On the first day of Christmas, my music therapist taught me, and it was all sorts of little techniques or ideas that mums could do with a little one, whether it's a very young baby or slightly older, in terms of getting children to appreciate music and fill in perhaps a missing word, all sorts of ideas. I did a compilation clip with them for our Christmas Eve special last year. So should we add that clip in?
I think we should, because when I re-listened to it this year, thinking about this episode, I actually thought it would be fun for anyone to do, regardless of whether you've got a little one, maybe you've got an old one, you know, anyone that might want a bit of a cheer up or a bit of fun could do any of these activities. It's brilliant.
And to see Grace Meadows, one of the music therapists that we work with at Chelsea and Westminster, go on and head up the Music for Dementia programme, I think that absolutely summarises what you're saying. Music is for everyone, isn't it, Flo?
Yeah, totally.
On the first day of Christmas, my music therapist gave to me the idea of a copying song.
On the second day of Christmas, my music therapist gave to me the idea of making some instruments at home.
On the third day of Christmas, my MT gave to me the idea of making up a bedtime song to sing to your little one each night.
On the fourth day of Christmas, my auntie gave to me the idea of adding some Macatron signs to your child's favourite nursery rhyme.
On the fifth day of Christmas, my music therapist gave to me the idea of a dressing song to help your little one.
On the sixth day of Christmas, my auntie gave to me the idea of listening to your favourite music together and having a dance.
On the seventh day of Christmas, my MT gave to me the idea of copying or mirroring even the smallest vocal or breathing sounds that your little one makes.
On the 8th day of Christmas, my auntie gave to me the idea of making up a song about what your little one is playing with.
On the 9th day of Christmas, my MT gave to me the idea of singing a familiar song and leaving spaces to see if your little one can fill in the words or give you a sign that they want you to continue.
On the 10th day of Christmas, my MT said to me, why don't we try making music with household objects together?
On the 11th day of Christmas, my MT gave to me the idea of using physical movements in an already familiar song.
On the 12th day of Christmas, my MT gave to me the idea of giving your little one the choice of 2 songs by offering 2 toys.
So, finally, you get the idea. Energetic, spontaneous, maybe a little out of control. I would say often. Greatly out of control.
And getting worse.
But coming from very good intentions, hoping to spark ideas and innovative thinking. So we come to 2021. What shall we do? Well, let's think. Oh, we both have podcasts. We both had a similar idea of using maybe music for our Christmas festive podcast. And what about a bumper joint episode describing some of our adventures with a musical theme? Ta-da!
Good idea, Flo.
Hopefully that's what we've just done. Back in 2015, let's come full circle and go back to the beginning. In our original Stellar Stories was day 16, Get Decorating. Every year at Christmas, we have a hospital Christmas decorations competition.
And it's very competitive, isn't it?
It's very competitive. People get very serious about it. And people put a lot of time and energy into it. And yes, people are fiercely competitive about who's going to win. And the chief exec and the chair, so very senior judges, come around usually on the Friday before Christmas, and there's an official judging. And there are different categories each year. And you're often disappointed if your ward or department doesn't get at least an honourable mention or something like that. So this always makes me think a little bit about that carol, deck the halls. You know, a hospital, if you know anything about hospitals, you know they're mainly corridors, long corridors. So when people start putting stuff up in the corridors, it makes me think deck the halls. So I had a little bit of a brainstorm and I rewrote some of the lyrics to Deck the Halls. And Gill had recently talked to me about voice memos, and my sister had shown me how to do a voice memo. So I sang Gill a voice memo of my idea about Deck the Halls with an alternative hospital decoration set of lyrics.
And I said it was a good idea.
Well, so tell us what happened next, Gill.
So I received your voicemail and I thought that's great, but I could see what was going to happen was that you were going to invite me to sing live on our joint podcast. And I think there's a difference between, we've done it once or twice in the room, haven't we? And that's kind of like spontaneous.
Oh, we did.
We did.
We sang Daisy Daisy.
We did.
I can't remember why.
People are thinking we're losing the plot now.
Yes. Okay. So, yes. So you weren't up for a duet, a singing duet.
Well, I think something spontaneous in the room where it just happens, but the idea that we've had the chance to think about it and it's still that bad. So I did...
You're chickening out.
I thought, well, who do we know who could perhaps do it a little bit better for us? And I went back to Claire, so Claire Flower, and I just sent her the lyrics, such as they were, and suggested that perhaps she might be able to help a bit. And this is where the brilliance of our community came in. She said, can you wait till Wednesday? Well, I think it was Monday, so that wasn't unreasonable. And she said, because I'm going into work on Wednesday and perhaps can get some of my friends to join in. And then when she sent it back to me, now, I think this is brilliant. It's better than if it was perfect. Do you know what I mean? She sent back what they'd done. I guess they probably had like one take at it because they're very busy people. And she sent it back to me and she said, Gill, it's far from perfect, but it's done. And our whole JFDI, Just Do It approach, Claire had bought into that. Her colleagues at Chelsea and Westminster have got together and they've even grabbed a tambourine, and here it is.
Deck the Halls for 2021. So thank you, Claire, and whoever she roped in unexpectedly on that day. We're very grateful.
Very grateful.
We hope you've enjoyed this, our latest Matex adventure. Who knows what next year, 2022, Matex adventure will be? We'll have to see.
Possibly violins.
Possibly violins.
Making people cry.
We hope you have a wonderful festive season, whether you're working over the holidays or not. Hopefully not too many of you have got COVID and are unwell. And we do hope that some of you have an opportunity to meet up with family and friends safely. We will see you all in 2022. In the meantime, happy Christmas and New Year from Flo and Gill.
From Flo and Gill. Thank you so much, Flo. That's been amazing. I hope people hang on in there with our adventures.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gill. And also, of great importance, thank you so much to Mr. Who Shoes, who now has to take our babbling recording, make some sense of it, and make it all far from perfect, but done.
Yeah. I'll choose my moment to ask him, but the brief will be far from perfect, but done.
And a Christmas outtake for you from Mr. Who's Shoes.
Shall I stop the recording? Yeah.
I think so. Do you think that was okay?
I think it was different. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. If so, please subscribe now to hear more of these fascinating conversations on your favourite podcast platform, and please leave a review. I tweet as Who's Shoes. Thank you for being on this journey with me, and let's hope that together we can make a difference.